Welcome to the Bitcoin Business Podcast put on by Sovereign. I'm your host, Brandon Karpolis. And today we have a guest who's a bit out of the norm for the folks we speak here at Sovereign. We are a Bitcoin only business. With me is Matt Hougan from Bitwise. Thank you, Matt, for joining me. And thank you
I'm
for
s-
being on.
yeah, I'm so excited to be here. This will be fun.
Yeah. So, one of the things I like to talk to people from all different aspects. Normally, we're talking with business owners or people um, working with businesses or that sort of thing. But you have a unique situation where you kind of have a frontline view to what the institutions are looking at, everything out there. And one of the things I've always struggled with as a Bitcoiner is just like why is this taking so long? Why is this so hard to get? I spent almost 20 years in traditional finance, and I spent the last 6 years of that career trying to get people at my organization to understand Bitcoin. It
hmm
was laughed out of the room. It was, I don't get this. However, recently, I've been talking to a lot more of them, and I'm giving the exact same pitch. The same thing I said 5 years ago, I'm just repeating it. And now they're going, oh, actually, that makes a lot of sense. Actually, oh, I understand it. And it's like, man, this was verbatim what I said to you in your office like 4 years ago. Now all of a sudden it makes sense to you. So, I'm curious what you're seeing on that front. Is it just that we have a more open uh it's in the zeitgeist more and it's more open and so people are willing to actually like listen to what you're saying as opposed to just dismiss it out of hand, but curious as to what you're seeing on in those circles.
Oh man, it sounds like you've been living my life for the last 8 years. I feel exactly the same way. I think there are multiple reasons for it. I've thought about this a lot. One is anchoring bias. So one thing that even us Bitcoiners should admit is the first time many people encounter Bitcoin, it's in a negative context, right? Maybe it was Mt. Gox, maybe it was associated with FTX. There's been plenty of negative stories in crypto, and so I think a lot of people anchor on that. And as a result, you have to get them not just to the 50-yard line, but to like the 80-yard line before they're willing to admit it. The other thing is, I just think, the reason it's sort of moving forward now is that there are more people you can point to that have made the same journey, right? If you're an institutional investor, you can look to Harvard's endowment, which made Bitcoin its single largest liquid holding, right? You can look at our new incoming Fed chair, Kevin Warsh, who is a fan of Bitcoin. You can look at Ray Dalio talking about 50. All of that provides cover for the person in charge to make the jump. The last factor, which I think gets overlooked, is demographics. I think it was the case 15 years ago that there were junior associates at Goldman Sachs who were into Bitcoin, maybe 10 years ago. But now they're managing directors. Right now, they've been there for 10 years. So even just the aging of people who were early into the space, I think plays a role. I do think it's accelerating, right? We're at that accelerating part of the curve. But I think those are some of the factors that make it so slow.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. I look back and think about how when I first heard about Bitcoin, how long I've been in it, how seriously I got into it. And and then I look at myself and I'm like, I'm 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 old comparatively to but at the same time I'm young in terms of sort of like an institutional position of authority. And now I did leave that institution and am doing our own thing here now at Sovereign, but um that's an interesting thing where you sort of have this maturity. Along those lines, though, it does seem like I'm curious to get your perspective too. It does seem like the younger generation is it's I don't want to say they're dismissive of Bitcoin, but they're just not as into it as maybe like the older millennials or like the middle millennials, kind of up even to Gen X, and then the boomers are just their own what
Yes.
they're just a write off at this point. So like I I is that something you see as well as like maybe it's just gonna have to filter down from these sort of 30 to 50-year olds that are kind of the ones driving this understanding and adoption?
I think that's the generation that's driving it. I think that is the right age framework. So I think you have that right. I think for people younger than that, there have been other things that have captured their attention. There has been AI. There's been precious metals boom. There's been some just equity holding that has captured their attention. They weren't there for the early days of Bitcoin when it was more challenging of the status quo, when it hadn't quite made it. And so they're looking at these other disruptive areas of the market. But I think that's actually fine, right? So before I moved into crypto full time 8 years ago, I was in the ETF industry. I saw something similar there, which was the young people in the financial industry embraced ETFs. The older generation embraced mutual funds. As the young people aged, ETFs became ascendant. And now maybe they're not as cool. Like it's not as neat to move into ETFs. You need to be in a more disruptive area if you're young and really want it. So I think it's natural, but this is the sort of salad days of growth. This is actually right. I know it doesn't feel like it at the particular moment, but this is the moment where it sort of hockey sticks up. So I think you have the generations correct.
Yeah, it's almost like I love listening to 90s music, and despite every kid under the age of 26 wearing a Nirvana shirt, I don't know if any of them have actually ever listened to Nirvana. Um, but at the same time, I get these emails for venues in the city I live in Chicago, and I'm like, I've heard of one of these artists, maybe. So
Yeah.
it's interesting you say that. It's kind of was this technological disruption. And the irony is that the stuff that's being built on Bitcoin is mind blowing right now. Like it is crazy how much easier Bitcoin has gotten to use in just the last 5 years. Like the technological developments and everything on the pace of Bitcoin technology improving is so much faster than it was in its early days. It's almost like this weird paradox of there's all this technology and opportunity, but sort of the conception of Bitcoin didn't happen at the same time or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's right. Well, you're right to point out the UX improvements, and that's occurred across multiple different segments. But the user experience of interacting with Bitcoin is so much better. I mean, it was really painful in the past, and I think that's how technologies go, right? It's sort of like social media, which was not cool once it was embraced in mainstream. Um, that's kind of the phase that we're in. It is going mainstream. It is being embraced. It is entering a much wider sphere, and maybe for that reason, it's taken some of the edge off. At the core, the technology is fundamentally still disruptive in a revolutionary sense to what money is. And I do think eventually people will come back to that and realize that, particularly in these bear markets, you often see sort of the top layer peel off and people return to the roots of what Bitcoin really is, and that will bring more people into it than when it's sort of surfing at the highs.
And the good news is, let's be honest, a lot of these people that get washed out at the top, they panic sell, but then they end up coming back later, and then they kind of help form the next bottom as we move along this adoption curve. But yeah, that's a good point you bring up about uh, the technology. I mean, you look at something like even cars, right? 50 years ago, there was no guarantee you can't call your boss and say your car broke down on the way to work. It was, what are you talking about?
So
This
true.
you put a Honda on the
So
road
true.
for 150,000 miles, you like don't even have to change the oil or move a tire or what do you mean it's broken down? But they used to break down all the time, and now the UX is much better. They're way more reliable. I mean, it tells me when I need to put air in my tires. Like,
Right.
my 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 grandpa passed away a few years ago, and one of the sort of knickknacks he had lying around was a tire pressure gauge, and it was something you would put on to check your tires. I'm like, I'll never need this because I just have a computer that says, it's too. You fill up your tires, the psi is too low. So
Right.
Yeah, that's a big part of it too. So I'm also curious. It as you're talking with more of the sort of institutional investors or people allocating funds on behalf of clients and that sort of thing, is it more that you or people in your position are going out and explaining it to them, or is it, hey, I've grokked this, I understand it, now I'm looking for like somewhere to deploy my capital?
Yeah, so in the case of Bitwise, it's more of the former. So we have a 25-person sales team. We do 15,000 meetings a year, mostly with financial advisors and family offices, some with insurance companies, endowments, and institutional trends. And we are going out there and educate. Often, if you're talking to a financial advisor, they'll have one or two or three clients that have advocated to get Bitcoin into their portfolio. So they will have some push. But what we're really looking to do is to get all 100 or 200 of their clients to have an allocation to Bitcoin. And in that case, it's educating that person about what it is. For what it's worth, that process is slow. To go back to the scale of this adoption, our average client allocates to us after 8 meetings. And you know in finance that if you can get a meeting quarterly, that's a pretty good cadence for a distribution team. So you do 8 meetings quarterly, it's a 2 year process. Now, the good part about at the end of that process, they become clients for life. And we've had inflows even in 2018, we had inflows in 2022, we had inflows last week. So they become very good clients. But it's us going out and doing the education. These people are busy. I know in crypto land, we think, how can you think about crypto anything less than 24/7, 365? But for a financial advisor, they only spend 10% of their time on investment management. The rest is on client services. And within that 10% sliver, how much time do they have, to give to crypto? It's not much. So we have to go out there and tell them what's going on in the market, answer their questions, and eventually onboard them into the space.
Yeah, I mean that's we're finding that as well, and with business owners and dealing with them, it takes a lot of touch points, and the people that eventually come in are people we talk to, people we followed up with, over and over and over, and that's like anything in life, right? That's every sort of sales cycle, business completion, deal closing, whatever you want to call it. That's just kind of the way it is. But it is. I really still am surprised that it's just taking so long to get going. And I was talking with someone about this, but it, at the end of the day, I guess we got to kind of look back at ourselves and just say you're trying to impose your own timeline onto Bitcoin, and
Mhm.
Bitcoin imposes its timeline on the world, and the better, the faster you accept that, the easier this journey is going to be for you.
That is a very Zen-like view of our frustration in operating, but I think it's absolutely right. The other thing I would add, and I've been doing this for 8 years, is we have really narrowed the list of objectives. If you go back 8 years ago, I would spend a lot of time talking about self-custody and how to set up custody. And we would take computers and remove the speakers and remove the Wi-Fi cards and do all these things to show how to create an air gap computer because people needed to understand that at a fundamental basis. Now the technology has improved enough that you don't really have to do that, right? Self-custody asset like ledgers have been around for a long time and they're proven. Institutional custodians like Coinbase or Fidelity or BitGo have been around for a long time and they're proven you're easier to check that kind of box. And that's been true on a number of different questions. We used to answer a lot of questions about Tether. We used to answer a lot of questions about how miners work. Now, most of those questions are sort of accepted, right? The Bitcoin network has had 100% uptime for 10 years and settled $125 trillion of transactions without a single mistaken transaction. You don't need to spend that much time proving that out. People just accept that as true. So I do think it's getting easier. I think it will accelerate, but yeah, it still is slow.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's almost like back in the day, you really did need to know what under the hood was going on, how it worked, and then be able to craft a good custody setup, and now you have something like a cold card, which is even for advanced users. But I mean, I, you can watch a YouTube tutorial. Or nowadays, you just plug it into ChatGPT. I've been shocked how much ChatGPT knows about hardware wallets. Like, so you can just ask, where do I find this setting, or how do I do this, and it'll just say, click here, click here, click here, boom, 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 done. And it's much easier to, and then that device, in case of the cold card, is air gapped. There's other air gapped hardware wallets out there. Some people just want it to be easier and they plug it into the computer, and there's just super simple software that connects them right to it. I mean, I remember walking people through hardware setups like in 2020, 2021, and it was there were some things you had to do and know where to go, and now it's like, okay, you got this wallet, get their software, or get Sparrow, even with open source software. You can just download that, plug in the wallet, and everything works. Very simple. You see the send, you see the receive, and it'll ask you to sign, and you just do it. And so all these all these tools have come so far that it is, the user doesn't necessarily need to be an expert and understand those things. Now, in terms of sort of the monetary policy and why the network credibly enforces that,
Hmm.
that's really the main thing that people need to understand now, to not get shaken out and have a long-term view of this.
I think that's right. I think the last part of what you said is importantly right. People can allocate without understanding it, but to not get shaken out, they do have to understand it at a core basis, and I think spend some time dwelling with it and thinking about it. I do think it's an idea that some people get it instantly, but more people, it has to marinate and they have to see it and think about it in the world. But then when it does, it's very sticky, right? They don't go the other way.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like the scarcity thing, I find people get almost immediately. People are like, okay, yeah, that's great. Yes, of course I would want a money where I knew there were only 21 million. I would rather have a unit of that currency than something we have no idea how many units of that currency are going to be. But then immediately the next thing is, wow, what if they change it to 28 million? What if they what if someone just writes a new code, and of
Yep.
course there's answers for all these things, but it's going through and explaining that to everyone. So
Yes, I've answered those questions so many times. And look, they're good questions. People should ask them. And Bitcoin has great answers, but you do have to give them answers and they have to reflect on it. They have to come back a few months later and ask the next series of questions. What happens when there are no more Bitcoin to be issued? And what if the security, they have to ask all those questions. So you need people to sort of walk down all those steps. And yeah, it takes a while, but they do get there.
they do eventually. That is the good thing. And it's funny, like I said at the beginning, same conversations I had, but for some reason it's like, oh, now it clicks. Now I get it. And maybe even it's just hearing about it more or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's right. I would also add the other side of the equation, the flip side of Bitcoin, the pair that we quote on the dollar side has become more dire. And I do think that has opened up people's minds as well, right? You have more
Oh yeah.
people seriously talking about fiat debasement, and you have Ray Dalio talking about sort of the end of that process and debt monetization. That is something that wasn't on CNBC 3 years ago, and now it's on CNBC all the time. And I do think that maybe it primes people to consider something like Bitcoin, right? If they hadn't been thinking about that risk, now they're thinking about that risk, and so they're open to solutions. I think that's been another major change.
Well, and we just printed so much money in response to COVID that it's like it's impossible to ignore it. And I really do think there's a large cohort of people that were kind of like, I'm okay getting debased a few percent every year, and I will suffer
Hmm.
through the purchasing power decline of my currency and my assets because I'm still earning money. I'm still out earning inflation, and that's good enough for me. The thing kind of works, and I can deal with a little increase in the cost of things, um, and that's fine, and that worked for a majority of people. But now the cost increase of things is just so astronomical. It's like, whoa, I did not increase my income enough to account for this, and people are starting to say like, okay, there something's wrong here, something's not making sense. Maybe I don't know what it is, but I do need to start maybe looking for some solutions on that front, because just because it is so pervasive in society after 2021. So
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the reality is, go back to the demographic thing. Almost no one working today remembers the world on the gold standard, right? You have to be what, 85 or something like that. We have all only lived in this fiat exclusive world. And that, I think, is why we needed something like the COVID shock to wake us up. Because that incremental boil frog, 2% inflation, steady slope on M2, you can sleepwalk through that because you're busy. You have other things to do, right? You have trying to increase your salary in other ways. Maybe it's not the pressing thing. But the shock of COVID, on the back of the shock of the global financial crisis and the dramatic increase, too big to ignore. And even if you've only lived in fiat waters for your whole life, it's like, whoa, maybe there's something wrong with these waters, and maybe I need to look outside of it.
yeah, and I'm curious too. Is that a sentiment? Are people coming to you with a preemptive like, okay, we saw how much money they created in '08, '09. We saw how much money they created during ZERP era. Now 2021 was just like parabolic. They're trying to rein it in. It doesn't seem like they're doing a great job. We're out there exploring solutions, or is it more of just, hey, this is a cool new innovation that I think we should keep an eye on? I'm curious to which one you're seeing
Oh,
more.
we definitely hear the former, right? The word debasement, again, was not said in polite circles in the
Fiat
investment
wasn't.
industry.
Fiat
Fiat
wasn't.
wasn't
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
We were dismissive of those people pre-Bitcoin. They were like, gold bugs, right? They were really cast into a corner. Yeah, no one talked about Fiat was a car company until 2 years ago. Um, and I do think
Bad one
now
too.
those have entered. Yeah, bad one. Well, maybe it was the name.
Yeah,
Just
of course.
inherited it,
Yeah.
inherently flawed.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, we do get people coming to us. They're concerned about debasement. They realize, in the case of financial professionals, 100% of their portfolio is exposed to fiat risk. And that idea that maybe you don't want 100% of your eggs in a single basket, which throughout history has been a bad basket at some point over time for everything. I do think that is resonating with people. We do have people come to us and want to hedge that, want to add some diversification, want to add some insurance, and they're looking for the best way to do that. And obviously, Bitcoin fits the bill.
Yeah, having money outside of the current rails, having a monetary network where you don't have to trust anyone to move money around. Um, the last few years, I mean, there's been all sorts of censorship online, and of course, there was the Canadian trucker protests, and then we had bank closures, and some banks got bailed out, others didn't, and it's just the ability to have that optionality of a system where you're guaranteed you're going to be able to send money to someone is something that I think is starting to resonate with a lot more people, and sounds a lot more attractive than it did maybe a decade ago.
I couldn't agree more. And I actually think it's on both sides of the political divide.
For sure.
If you've lived in the US for the last 10 years, doesn't matter if you're left or right, you can imagine a scenario where your rights would be restricted because it's been such polar swings. And so I think the idea that, yeah, maybe we need a neutral third party rail where it's on us, maybe that's good. And I think it's really important that it's been on both sides. And I do think, despite what you read in the headlines, I think that is a realization that a lot of people have come to, that we need a non-political form of money. Money is being weaponized around the world. by different countries and by different factions within those countries. And having an ability to opt out at least a portion of that is a fundamental right, pretty important.
Yeah, each team gets their chance to weaponize the money against their
That's right.
opponent, and yeah, it's just this constant back and forth of, well, all right, who you're our representative, so these guys beat us up. Now we want you to go beat them up, and it's like, I mean, that's going to turn on you the second the other side gets in power. Like every all the power you wanted to project onto the other side is going to be turned right back on you. And I mean, I there's been tons of these GoFundMe's and Give Send Goes and all this kind of stuff that has just been pulled down because they didn't even like it. And I don't know if you heard, but there's all this stuff coming out, individuals talking about not being able to get money through Chase to get into different platforms. I know Jack Mallers came out. He said a few months ago, he said he was kicked out of the bank. Other people have complained of stuff. Of course, we had the whole advance rate adjustment against strategy, and then all of a sudden Chase couldn't deliver their shares and all this kind of other stuff. And now, like, people are posting online their individual experiences of, I can't send money to Kraken, I can't send it to Strike, I can't send it to River, I can't send it to Coin. You know, people are just not being able to connect to these rails, and now all of a sudden your money's trapped. Like, it's uh, I'm sure I don't need to tell you, but when you put your money into a bank, it's not actually your money. It's an IOU that you hope you get your money back one day. And guess what? The bank doesn't have all of it. So um, they don't have all of everyone's together. So um, there's
It's wild.
there's an opportunity that you're not getting that back, and now we're starting to see doors close from, I probably, if not the biggest bank, I don't, maybe B of A or City or something's bigger, but one of the biggest three banks in the country for sure is just starting to lock people out. And that could be anyone any day you wake up and try to do this. So
It's wild. Yeah, anyone who thinks it hasn't or can't happen, the last 15 years just rife with it, right? You have what you're talking about. You have the massive debanking that took place under the Biden administration, which was really caustic to those of us within crypto, and we had experience of that at Bitwise. You mentioned the Canadian truckers, which is still just incredible to imagine a government taking those steps, but there it is. So the data is there, right? And I think it points to the long term importance of what Bitcoin is building.
yeah. So are you dealing at all with businesses as well, or just is it all pretty much wealth advisors, RIAs, and that sort of thing?
Yeah, so our primary audience is wealth advisors and RIAs and family offices and institutions. We have a couple corporate clients for sort of SMA style products that we offer separately managed accounts, but it's not the primary thing we do. It's not a focus of what we've reached out to at this point. We're more of a traditional asset management firm in that perspective. Um, yeah.
Yeah, fair. I just, we're hearing more and more that that businesses and people are just looking. They're kind of price agnostic, but they're like, I need some exposure to some money that I can move around and not be beholden to someone clicking yes that my transaction will go through. So
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a growth area. I think all of those things that I just outlined are on their own similar trajectory. They're at different points. I think business is for sure a significant growth area, and is maybe just a little bit earlier than where the advisor community is. But that's, these things move in building waves. I think that's what we see, from our perspective.
yeah, you just look at like a Steak and Shake, for example, this year that implemented a Bitcoin strategy. I think they said they saved 50% in fees on the transactions where Bitcoin was used to pay over the Lightning Network. They saw 15% growth, same store sales, in which is, as someone who used to deal with franchises a lot in my previous life, 15% same store sales in a quarter is, I mean, that's unheard of. Like,
Crazy. Yeah.
franchises don't do 15% same store sales increase in like a decade, you know. Half a percent, a percent, those are like good numbers in a year. And so to see that, it's it's shocking. And again, it's just back to like, you can stare out there, you can look at something like a strategy, and they're not my favorite example of businesses going out there, being a profitable company, storing your profits in business, and and taking your time and energy and storing it in something that can't be debased. But you cannot argue the success the company has had, the valuation of the company. I mean, what they're doing is fiat arbitrage, and it's working, and they've 100x the value of that company from just a software company. And now you look at Steak and Shake, and it to me, it's still. I just look at this and I'm like, all the evidence is right in front of you here, guys. Like, this is working for people. It's doing better. You're opening up yourselves to a whole new market segment, but it's just the pushback is just crazy.
Yeah, well, when you get into finance, they tell you that this time is different are the four most expensive words in finance. And the funny thing is that people sort of weaponize that against Bitcoin as if we're saying this time is different. In fact, what you're pointing out is actually all Bitcoin is all you have to do to be bullish on Bitcoin, to be bullish on corporate adoption, to be bullish on institutional adoption, to be bullish on its role in the global stage, is say that the same stuff that's been happening for the last 16 years will just continue to happen, right? It's actually this time is different is on the other side. It's the people who are, somehow claiming that all of the trends that you're pointing to, whether it's strategy accumulating or more companies accumulating or Steak and Shake growing same store sales, um, that those will somehow change. And I don't understand why they would change on the downward trajectory. I can see them changing on the upward trajectory as concern about fiat increases, but I don't, it basically just has to keep happening. That's it.
Yeah, it's just it's so wild to me that I sit here and see this, and it's just so clear. I talk to so many business owners on this podcast that come on, and I started selling my product for Bitcoin, and I found this whole new cohort of customers, and now it's that is the norm. The norm is you make a good product, you advertise that you sell it for Bitcoin. And you got to advertise it. You do have to do the marketing. Like, you can't just be like, I accept Bitcoin, and now my company's going to do many more sales. It's like, no, you have to get out there. You got to make yourself known. You got to ingratiate yourself to the community and that sort of thing. But every single one of those people that are willing to put in the time and effort and go out there and take payments in Bitcoin, their business just improves so much, and they increase their sales, and they have new customers and loyal
100%. Well,
customers.
it's a $2 trillion market of wealthy, mostly younger people who operate in the financial ecosystem and typically have money to spend. I mean, you strip Bitcoin from it, everyone should be going after this market because it's extraordinarily attractive just from a size growth. It's also growing, 60% a year on average for the last decade or so. That's an extraordinarily attractive market. So it doesn't surprise me that the businesses that identify that and go into it do well. They found this cohort of wealthy, young, fast accumulating people. That's a pretty good group to go after.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole marketing strategy forever, right? Is go out and get what's the what is it, like the 18 to 34
Mhm.
demographic, or because then
Right.
because now you have a customer for life, right? Because once people start buying something, they just get used to it. It's like, yeah, okay, they may not have all the money, but they will in 20 years, and that's why we want to market. We want to get them in now, just like the school system. We want to teach these kids. We want to scramble their brains when they're young, and
Right.
then they're loyal and part of the system. And now you have that demographic, but who have money, like who actually have the ability to purchase things. And your focus has been on that cohort anyways. You might as well just ref- narrow it down a little more to go find the specific cohort of people that actually have the money.
Totally. Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Man, well, it is it's frustrating living through this, but at the same time, it's humbling, and um it's teaches you a lot. It teaches you that you whatever expectations you had, whatever timeline you thought, no one can predict the future. You don't know. It's going to go slower. And what's going to be crazy is at the end of the day, it'll, maybe it'll be 50 years, maybe it'll be 60 years. Even that like we basically completely had a new monetary network and standard that took place in 50 years or 40 years or whatever the number is. In the grand scheme of civilization, it's like absolutely nothing. And yet we still want it to go faster. So,
I think that's right. I mean, I think it's extraordinary, right? We're trying to separate money from state. We're trying to move to a more sound, independent, self-sovereign system. And we've gone from nothing to having sovereign wealth funds and some countries owning it and millions of people owning it in 15 years. That's a lot of progress. So I hear you on being frustrated. That's because you can see where this is going. Um, but the scale of what we're trying to do has never been achieved before. And it's really enormous and really important. And I think it's going pretty well if you're able to step back from it. It's going pretty well. Yeah.
100%. I've made peace with it. I'm however long it takes, it's gonna take. I get it now. People not understanding Bitcoin or rejecting Bitcoin used to bug me, and now I just go, okay, well, that's another touch point for you, and maybe to your 8 touch points earlier,
That's right.
maybe I don't know what the number is for Bitcoin adoption. I don't know if it's 3 or 13 or whatever, but here's another touch point for you. Here's another piece of exposure to it, and you'll come on your own time. And listen, we all came on our own time too. We weren't Satoshi, we weren't Hal Finney, we weren't some of these cypherpunks that got it right from the beginning, or even like a Max Kaiser or something like that. It took us a decade to come around too, and it'll just take the same for other people. And um, consensus of what has worked in the past, conservatism, especially in the financial space, is a real thing, and it's a real force. And it is. And listen, it's served our species well. It has preserved things. You don't want to just rashly jump into the next thing because you just want to do new stuff. It needs to be tested and tried and true and looked at. Otherwise, your civilization will fall apart. So there is a part of human nature that is rightfully conservative with those things, anyways. So,
Yeah, 100%. And Bitcoin, it's on a spectrum. When it started, you were right to perceive it as risky. It was like a few people. We didn't know if it would work. Maybe some people looked at it, read the white paper, realized how perfect it was, and knew it would work forever. But I can't even imagine. I'm not smart enough to have done that. I'd want to see some real world demonstration, right? And every year that goes by, it builds up more data points. Again, I think the stat I threw out about it having 100% uptime for the last 10 years, if you go to 15 years, it had a few moments where the network hiccuped for a few hours, right?
yep.
But for the last 10 years, 100% uptime, $125 trillion processed, no wrong. There's no other financial ecosystem that can match that. So as that track record gets built up, maybe for some people they want to see 15 years. Fine, right? I don't think it's going down again. I think it'll be 100 years if you need to wait that long. But that track record we're building up, and it's going to capture more and more people as it does that.
Yeah, it's just so decentralized at this point. There's so many nodes all across the world. I mean, you're talking about truly apocalyptic scenarios where the whole network would go down. I mean, 100% of the nodes went down, I don't know if humanity's here anymore. So
I agree. I agree. We probably have other things to worry about.
yeah, exactly. And goods. We're going to be back to the barter system. Money's going to be worth a lot less than some canned goods or some ammo or something like
That's
that.
right.
So,
Yep. Yep.
and frankly, I'm not even sure I want to live. I don't even know if I want to try to live through that. So, we'll that might just be all right. It's we had a good run. It's time to check out here. But um, well, also along those lines of it's like getting, did you would you want to be the guy on the first airplane? Of course not. I
Right.
I
Yep.
definitely wouldn't be me, the first guy on the first ship. Probably not. And so yeah, there is, and that is what's being built here. And I was just talking about this with someone a few days ago as well. Is really what you need to be looking at is the bottom of that log chart, is the points on the bottom. That's the increasing adoption. That's the conviction level. That's the people who have said, I understand this thing from first principles, and I want to hold a better form of money, and that's just gonna continue to grow.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The other thing I would say about the current moment is, in bear markets, or in pullback moments, all the good news gets ignored, but it doesn't get lost. It just gets stored as potential energy for the future. And I think that's what there's actually been a lot of good news in the last 5 months, even as the prices retraced from the October highs. There's been approval on national account platforms. There's been rising conviction in the debasement trade. There's been a growth in the store of value market. Um, there's plenty of positive things to look at, and I think all of that will eventually make itself known. It just gets temporarily overlooked, but it doesn't get forgotten. It just gets stored, and I think that's the moment that we're in right now.
Yeah, that's building the base, right? That's setting the floor, if you will. And that next piece of good news just keeps adding on, keeps strengthening the network. And one of the really cool things about being in the Bitcoin space is you get a front row seat to all the things that are being built, and the stuff that is being built out there, the stuff people are working on. And I'm not sure if you saw, but I think it was the Helsinki conference, or maybe it was Baltic Honey Badger, maybe it was Baltic Honey Badger, where every single merchant was set up with, uh, I think they used the Arc network, and it was just Lightning was like a glue that held these five or six different protocols together, and anyone could just, however they wanted to interact with the Lightning network, they could just pay. And it's like, do you like, that is so revolutionary, so mind-blowing, that you're going to be able to build stuff. And now how fast these AI agents are increasing their ability to make stuff and use the Bitcoin network and use tools like Master, use these open protocols to basically build. I mean, we're going to see just such a massive, we're already seeing a massive increase in the stuff being built on top of this. And it's just going to accelerate. It's just going to get faster and faster. But to your point, if all you're doing is looking at the price or watching MSNBC, and you just see it as another ticker in your portfolio or something like that, you don't really get a view of any of this stuff going on. And it's harder to get excited about something when you don't see all the inner workings of that's going on.
Yeah, that's definitely right. Because you will see the price. You can't not see the price. Everyone sees the price. We can pretend we don't, but everyone sees the price. And so, if that is your primary news flow, yeah, you're missing out on what's going on beneath the surface. That's one of the reasons I like to come and talk. I have my own little angle of things I see underneath the surface, which is all these meetings with institutional investors. And I can tell you that there is no bear market actually. So that's another angle from the technology angle, but on the institutional adoption side, the pace of meetings is just the same. The interest is probably up. People are seeing the pullback as an opportunity. And I do think you need to get underneath the surface of price or listen to people who are underneath the surface of price, so you can see what the fundamentals of Bitcoin are, for lack of a better word. And those are doing really well.
Yeah, I've been shocked, even just all the people I talk to, the number of people that have actually heard about Bitcoin, that are willing to learn about Bitcoin, places that are like, "Oh yeah, we'll sit down, we'll have a lunch with you." 4 years ago, there is no way they would have sat down, had a lunch with me, even listened to me. They would have been like, "You're a crazy person, go away." Now they're like, "Yeah, we'll talk to you. Let's tell me about it." Um, and to what all this stuff we were talking about earlier, about in terms of this just building and however long it takes, and it's been up and running for 10 years. And my personal favorite Bitcoin meme slogan, whatever you want to call it, is TikTok next block. There's like 19 amazing mind-blowing concepts all like wrapped up in that, but at every
Yep.
block that gets added on, it gets harder and harder to deny that this thing is going to go away. And that that actually is one of the things, one of the refrains I have heard a lot from people is, it's obviously not going away. Now I should probably learn something about it. Whereas I never heard that, even just a few years ago. Um,
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I tell people it's harder to convince someone that Bitcoin's worth $1 and not zero than it is to convince them it's worth $1 million and not $1. I do think that initial step of it's not going away and it has intrinsic value in the world and it's going to be valued forever. Once you make that leap, um, it becomes very easy to make to stretch to where you can see its significance over time. And I do think, as you said, every day it goes on, every day that it continues to actually strengthen and get better, makes it easier for people to make that initial leap. And I think that's actually where most people get off the Bitcoin train, is they can't make that initial leap. Once they make that initial leap, they're in, and it's hard to imagine it not being really globally important.
yeah, it's almost like you just have to submit. You just have to say, "Okay, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to listen." And it's like, once that's broken down, I mean, I have never had someone spend more than 10 hours studying Bitcoin and be like, I don't get it. I don't understand. If I can get you, if I can get you to read the Bitcoin standard, if I can get you to like 10 hours, you're at least, that person is then at least like, okay, I should probably learn more about this. I should know a little bit more about it. The people I can't get to are the ones that are just like, I'm never buying it. I don't care. My mind's closed. Um, it's not happening. And those are the people where I'm just like, I never have a chance with you. I'm never gonna have a chance. But yeah,
That's right.
it is that willingness to just let your guard down and be like, okay, I gotta understand this. And then once you do, it's, I mean, are you aware of anyone who's like really put, 100 hours into Bitcoin, that's been like, I don't get it. I'm scared about something here. I mean,
No, it's definitely a one-way door. I
yeah,
definitely agree with that. Yeah, once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. You
yes,
just need to help people see it, right? And they'll get there. Again,
they will.
everyone gets there on their own time, right? Michael Saylor was a Bitcoin skeptic in 2013, and he's not anymore. So, everyone, I think almost everyone, as you said, a few exceptions, goes through this process. So that's been going on for 10 years. It'll keep going on for 15 years. It'll keep going on for the next 15 as well.
I certainly went through it myself. I was very much a skeptic, and we used to do a thing. My old boss and a few guys, we would get together at the end of the year and we would do predictions for the following year. And I think I said, this was like 2016 or something. I was like, Bitcoin's going to, I don't know if I said zero, but I'm like, it's gonna be draw down 90%. It's like never coming. I basically declared Bitcoin dead, and then
Right.
2 years later, I bought my first made my first purchase. So I can sympathize with the journey and the path it takes. So um,
It's hard. Yeah, it's hard for people to accept something as new. I think a lot of people assume you're like at the end of history of financial development. They can't imagine anything beyond fiat currencies. They couldn't imagine anything beyond mutual funds. Um, they couldn't imagine anything beyond physical banks that you go to and talk to a teller. They couldn't imagine ATMs. I mean, the history is full of these people thinking this is it. This is the final version. They were skeptical of Robinhood. No one will trade on phones, right? All of that was met with the same sort of skepticism,
credit cards.
actually. Exactly.
Yeah,
They were
yeah,
skeptical of credit cards. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Who would ever trust these? They had to like airdrop credit cards to
yeah.
people. I mean, that, right? Finance, it's hard to break habits, particularly around money. And people are skeptical that there will ever be anything other than the way they've been doing it, right? I'll never not write paper checks. Right? I'll never use an online account. I will never have a digital form of self-sovereign money. I just think like it's the same story,
Yep.
and just part of the process.
Absolutely. Well, Matt, I know you need to go. You're at the top of the hour, and I think that's a good note to end this one on. So I thank you coming on, and appreciate your insights and what you're seeing out there. And if people want to check you out, where should they go?
Yeah, sure. Come on over to Bitwise Investments. I write a weekly memo, Bitwise Investments /CIO memo, or find me on X. It's Matt underscore Hogan. Hogan is spelled funny. It's Hougan. So Matt underscore Hougan. You can find my commentary there.
And always, this is the Bitcoin Business Podcast put on by Sovereign. You can find us on all the socials by just searching Sovereign, SOVREIGN, or the website Sovereign, SOVREIGN.io. And I'm Plebe Anon on Noster, and you can find me on LinkedIn under my real name, Brandon Karpoulos. So, Matt, thank you so much for your time today. Hope you have a great one. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Brandon. This was
Thanks.
fun.